Chapter 2646, I'll Help You Boomum. The giant grey magic formation began to tremble violently upon being bombarded by the 3 black asteroids as though it was about to collapse. However, it only lasted for a short while before matters began to die down again. What? The Scorpion King's face turned pale upon looking at the unscathed grey magic formation, showing his desperation. He had done his best by performing his most powerful technique and even swallowed the Holy Witch Mantra magic pill. However, he still could not break the magic formation in the end. The people from Crimson Stone Fort, even Jian Wushuang and his official army, would have no hope to escape upon his failure. Haha, that scared me a little. Good thing the magic formation isn't broken. Otherwise, he could have run off. Li Chenji immediately laughed maniacally. He failed just by a tiny margin. If his offensive energy was a little stronger, like 10 or 20%, he could have perhaps broken the magic formation. It's too bad the Scorpion King has shown us his very limits with no possibility for his energy to further increase, sneered Gug. The Scorpion King and all those Crimson Stone Fort disciples can't escape with the magic formation still here. They must all die. Baitu's voice resonated arrogantly. The Scorpion King and the surviving Crimson Stone Fort's heaven ultimate gods fell silent upon hearing his words. Their faces had betrayed them and shown their hopelessness. The hopelessness filled their hearts such that they even lost their motivation to fend off attacks from their enemies. However, Jian Wushuang was not excluded in their hopeless feeling group. Not only did Jian Wushuang not feel hopeless, but his eyes were also shining with a sharp light. On the contrary, he saw an opportunity to survive. Lord Scorpion King, your strike just now had indeed shaken the magic formation such that I can even feel it was about to collapse and barely blocked the offense in the end. Your attack energy would have completely crushed the magic formation with a slight increase in power. As for the energy, the sharp light within Jian Wushuang's eyes became brighter and brighter. He had decided in his mind. Stop struggling since you can't escape anyways, kid. That's right, just be good and let us take you. Mr. Baitu from the Divine Demon Sect may let you live because of your pretty remarkable talents if you pass your interspatial ring to us. Hee. However, death will be your end if you keep struggling. The 3 heaven ultimate gods who surrounded Jian Wushuang were laughing presumptuously. Although they could not touch Jian Wushuang at that moment, other heaven ultimate gods, high-level grand ultimate gods, and even peak grand ultimate gods would soon arrive without them needing to do much on their part. Jian Wushuang would surely die when that happens. However, Jian Wushuang sneered as well right at that moment as on his body. Ring. A flash of golden light suddenly surged from the golden robe he was wearing, which was none other than the golden glass armor. The golden-colored armor covered his entire body's surface within only a second. 9 Sparkle Stars armor, one of the 5 secret skills from 7 Stars Black Sect, could raise Jian Wushuang's overall abilities by 3-fold. Scram! A humongous sword essence swept violently in every direction as Jian Wushuang fiercely shouted. The 3 heaven ultimate gods around him were at a standstill just moments ago. However, the trio was immediately thrown backward following his ability's drastic increment under the terrifying crisscrossing sword shadows. Jian Wushuang's figure moved in a flash and left the 3-way behind before dashing rapidly toward the void ahead. A 15 kilometers tall golden god shadow was formed behind him, which also had golden armor shrouding its body. Jian Wushuang's aura shot up to the heavens as he dashed toward the Scorpion King's direction. Although he attracted some people's attention, none cared too much as Jian Wushuang was only an Earth ultimate god after all. Even if his battle strength was comparable to a heaven ultimate god's, he should not be able to affect the Scorpion King and those grand ultimate gods' battle. All of them thought so except for Jian Wushuang himself. Jian Wushuang squinted at that moment and suddenly gave out a loud cry. Lord Scorpion King, bombard the magic formation once more. I'll give my all to help you break it open this time. His loud cry resonated everywhere. The many heaven ultimate gods who were fighting intensely on the battlefield and the official army soldiers could all hear it loud and clear. The Scorpion King, Gug, Baitu, and Li Chenji, the 4 grand ultimate gods who were fighting intensely, could naturally hear him and were all shocked. What did they just hear? An Earth ultimate god dashing at them in such an epic fashion while announcing that he would help the Scorpion King to break open the magic formation. The Scorpion King had tried his hands on the magic formation, but could not break it open even upon performing his most powerful strike under the Holy Witch Mantra magic pill's effect. What could an Earth ultimate god come up with? Jian Yi, the Scorpion King, gazed at Jian Wushuang with a frown. All the others looked in Jian Wushuang's direction with nothing but confusion in their eyes. However, Jian Wushuang had no time to clarify those people's doubts as he waved his hand while he dashed forward without explaining anything. A light beam then blended into the surrounding void. Heaven and earth suddenly started changing. An extremely beautiful scroll painting unfolded in mid-air above the infinite cosmos. The world within the painting looked so real, with mountains, rivers, and even the 9 continents. It was so vivid. A grand boundless ancient aura began to expand downward from the painting world. What's that? A treasure. Such a unique treasure, everything in the scroll painting looks so real. All those experts gazed at the painting world above and became momentarily lost in thought. However, Jian Wushuang sneered. 1,000 treasures, grand world, transmigration world. Boom. The surrounding heaven and earth began to change. This place was originally above the mountains. Even though it was nighttime, immense sweeping divine powers were lighting up heaven and earth from below like lamps and bonfires. However, heaven and earth descended into infinite darkness in the blink of an eye and created boundless darkness without a single glimmer of light. Multiple reincarnation passages appeared in mid-air within the darkness. The reincarnation passages were scattered in various corners of the world as infinite samsara strength also ruthlessly expanded. It was a transmigration world filled with samsara strength. In that world, experts who studied transmigration law could have their battle strength increased immensely. The Scorpion King was of course someone who had also studied the transmigration law. Chapter 2647, Escape. The boundless samsara strength filled every corner of that world. The Scorpion King was the first person who could sense it, as he was also specialized in transmigration law. Such surge in samsara strength, this world is simply born of it. Scorpion King was completely stunned. My attack. The Scorpion King maneuvered the dark asteroid closest to him and directly lashed out at Li Qianji. Regardless of size or momentum, the dark asteroid was a level higher than before with an even faster speed. Li Qianji defended himself with all his might when it appeared before him. However, bang! A loud noise. What? Li Qianji was shocked. He felt a surge of terrifying energy moving toward him. Although it could not kill him, it made his divine body tremble violently as a gulp of blood gushed out from his mouth. He humphed coldly before immediately jumping out. The energy of my strike is 50% higher than before. The Scorpion King was completely shocked and immediately felt ecstatic after that. On the other hand, the experts from Divine Demon Sect and Life and Death Tower, including Bai Tu and Gug, were incredibly stunned and angry. All of them had witnessed the Scorpion King being incapable of breaking down the magic formation around him by only relying on his abilities even after swallowing the Holy Witch Mantra magic pill. However, his abilities drastically and suddenly increased after the Dark Transmigration World appeared. The Transmigration World was unleashed by the Earth Ultimate God Jian Wushuang. This kid has only an Earth Ultimate God territorial lord. How could he unleash such an incredible technique? World transformation. This technique is unearthly. Many experts gasped at its marvel. However, they did not know that the Transmigration World was just one of the 1,000 Treasures Grand Worlds. 1,000 Treasures Grand World, which meant to create the most suitable world for one to fight in accordance to one's strength and absolute geographical advantage. Jian Wushuang specialized in space-time law, transmigration law, and sword principle. Therefore, creating the space-time, transmigration, and sword principle worlds using the 1,000 Treasures Grand Worlds would greatly increase his abilities. However, such increments did not only help him but also everyone. Adapting to local conditions. Experts who studied transmigration law would all become a lot stronger in the transmigration world. Sword practitioners, on the other hand, would receive incredible upgrades in the sword world. It was as such. Jian Wushuang knew the moment the transmigration world was unleashed it would help increase the Scorpion King's overall abilities by 50%, hence he took action without hesitation. Lord Scorpion King, please do it right now. Jian Wushuang shouted. The Scorpion King snapped out of his shocked feeling upon hearing Jian Wushuang's words. His sturdy divine power aura began to immediately surge without any hesitation. He once again appeared at the grey magic formation's edge while maneuvering 3 asteroids. The asteroids were incredibly huge with powerful momentum. At that moment, boom boom, the 3 asteroids suddenly landed on the grey magic formation. It was the same move with the Scorpion King previously used with all his might. Although it had initially shaken the grey magic formation, it finally stopped the attack. However, the Scorpion King unleashed his move once again under the transmigration world's influence, which drastically increased the 3 asteroids' momentum by 50%. It seemed to have gone beyond what the grey magic formation could endure after multiple consecutive bombardments. Bang! A huge rumble resonated as a gigantic hole was immediately formed on the grey magic formation at the spot where the 3 asteroids bombarded. No. Gug, Bai Tu, and Li Qianjis' expressions changed. The magic formation was a whole entity by itself as a huge amount of grey energy started dissipating at high speeds the moment one side was breached and caused the entire grey magic formation to collapse in the blink of an eye. The grey magic formation had disappeared. That sight made the surviving Crimson Stone Fort Heaven Ultimate Gods and the many official army soldiers happy beyond words. They were trapped within the grey magic formation and waiting to be slaughtered just moments ago. Run! Run! Split up and escape! The Heaven Ultimate Gods from Crimson Stone Fort and Northern Darkstar Territory's official army did not hesitate as they began to escape toward various directions in a split second. Threads of light suddenly started moving toward every direction. Those Heaven Ultimate Gods' great personal strength was shown when they escaped at full speed. The official army's capabilities were also expected. Although their escape tactics were nothing to shout about when compared with Heaven Ultimate Gods, their numbers were huge. Divine Demon Sect and Life and Death Tower had only over 40 Heaven Ultimate Gods and simply could not afford to worry about the fleeing official army. The Divine Demon Sect and Life and Death Tower's Heaven Ultimate Gods were embarrassed as they could only chase after the few Crimson Stone Fort's Heaven Ultimate Gods. However, it was not easy to catch them. On the other hand, the Scorpion King raised his head and laughed after the magic formation was broken. He then glided into the surrounding void at full speed just like everybody else. Scorpion King, don't even dream of escaping. Gug's blue hair was floating in the air as an immense divine power aura swept out of her body as she squealed with her fierce face and blood-red eyes as though blood was about to stream out of them. Blue light threads then shot out like venomous snakes. The tough and incredibly fast blue light threads shrouded Scorpion King inside and blocked his escape within only a short moment. Bai Tu and Li Qianji quickly performed their hidden techniques by sacrificing quite a bit of energy to help Gug block the Scorpion King's escape route. So what if you've broken open the magic formation? You and your interspatial ring are our real target. It's our gain so long we kill you and take the ring, shouted Gug. Both Bai Tu and Li Qianji understood that logic as well, hence they did their best to stop the Scorpion King. The Scorpion King used the 9 asteroids to attack fiercely time and again, completely unleashing his strongest battle strength. However, he only managed to break out of their restriction. The Holy Witch Mantra Magic Pills effect is about to be over. Scorpion King's eyes turned frosty. Its side effects would kick in immediately as soon as the pills effect was over. His abilities would decrease sharply, making it impossible to run away from those 3 grand ultimate gods at that time. Jian Yi. The Scorpion King growled decisively before waving his hand and lashing out a black thread of light at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang subconsciously grabbed it only to find a black color interspatial ring the moment he opened his palm. Jian Wushuang shuddered as his mind raced and realized what was happening. Chapter 2648, Furious. This is, Jian Wushuang looked into the interspatial ring in his hand and saw a large number of blood gems piled up like a mountain. The naked eye rough estimation amounted to around a few billion catties. There was no doubt the interspatial ring was used to store those blood gems. The 3,700,000,000 catties of blood gems from the mineral vein, which amount to the wealth of 37 billion primordial stones, were all in this interspatial ring. Jian Yi, give it to the fort master. The Scorpion King roared while relying on his last bit of the medicinal effect to try his best and stop those three grand ultimate gods, Gug, Bai Tu, and Li Qianji. Those three grand ultimate gods realized what the Scorpion King had given to Jian Wushuang. Quick! Stop him. Kill that kid and take back the interspatial ring in his hand. Hurry up. Those three grand ultimate gods screamed as they were being held down by the Scorpion King and could not free their hands, but the heaven ultimate gods from Life and Death Tower and Divine Demon Sect had the freedom to attack. More than a dozen heaven ultimate gods in the void near Jian Wushuang gave up on chasing and killing the Crimson Stonefort group before going straight at Jian Wushuang instead after hearing the three struggling grand ultimate gods' command. Jian Wushuang had a determined look on his face. He cast a deep look at Scorpion King after making a decision. Run. Jian Wushuang was moving at his top speed as he tried his best to skim forward. However, the heaven ultimate gods from Life and Death Tower and Divine Demon Sect were right behind him. Jian Wushuang had to do something. Boom! A majestic gush of divine power like a volcano that had been dormant for hundreds of millions of years erupted from Jian Wushuang. It was just way too much. The divine power discharged by Jian Wushuang was beyond what many heaven ultimate gods could have imagined. A pure divine power eruption. He had used this trick when he first encountered the Infernal Heart Prefecture Governor in the Dark Thunder territory. Their gap was astonishingly huge as he was only a second-class divine demon at that time while the Infernal Heart Prefecture Governor was a peak divine demon. However, Jian Wushuang had only used around 30% of his divine power, which was sufficiently terrifying to forcibly block Infernal Heart Prefecture Governor away for a long time before managing a complete retreat. The divine power he possessed was countless times greater than before after reaching Earth Ultimate God Realm. He was also discharged more than 30% of his divine power, it was 50%. How much exactly was 50% of the vast and incredible amount of divine power? A divine power ocean. A huge and boundless divine power ocean instantly formed. There seemed to be no end to the divine power ocean. Divine power tidal waves at a few hundred feet to even a few thousand feet high frantically swept around. The heaven ultimate gods who came from every direction to attack Jian Wushuang were instantly crushed and drowned by the divine power ocean. How's this possible? How can his divine power be so much? Unbelievable. What a spectacular divine power. Those heaven ultimate gods were shocked by the pure divine power's impact. Although the power driven by that divine power was not too intense and it did not pose much threat to them, they still had to resist with all their strength and were busy dispersing it without any time to worry about Jian Wushuang. On the other hand, Jian Wushuang concurrently produced a few hundred apparitions at the same time before displaying his scary full speed. In just a matter of seconds, he had shuttled out of those heaven-earth ultimate gods' besiege and left the battlefield. Scorpion King, farewell. Jian Wushuang left a message as he quickly disappeared from everyone's sight. The divine power ocean slowly faded away after he left. The world was returned to its original state as the transmigration world that spread throughout the battlefield had also disappeared. Garbage. A bunch of garbage. The three grand ultimate gods, Gug, Bai Tu, and Li Qianji were furious. On the other hand, the Scorpion King was grinning as he saw what Jian Wushuang had done. His cultivation speed is extremely fast as he had made a breakthrough from Primera level Ultimate God Realm to Peak Earth Ultimate God Realm in just 20 years. His combat power is also strong enough to allow him to simultaneously contend against three grand ultimate gods without being defeated. The techniques he has used, Transmigration World and the surging divine power he instantly discharged were shocking. He's extremely talented and powerful with great techniques with unfathomable potential. No wonder the old master appreciated him, haha. Hell definitely helped the fort master to resolve this deadlock and I won't have any regrets even if I die. The Scorpion King smiled with shining bright eyes. The medicinal effect in his body had completely dissipated and replaced by a serious side effect. His divine power began to quickly fade away as well. Scorpion King, go to hell. The three grand ultimate gods, Gug, Bai Tu, and Li Qianji did not show the Scorpion King any mercy and killed the weakened Scorpion King, who was incapable to resist without hesitation. The battlefield gradually calmed down after the Scorpion King died. Crimson Stone Fort had sent more than a dozen heaven ultimate gods. 8 of them had died and left their bodies behind, with only a few managed to escape. Some of the official army soldiers had also died during the battle, but most of them managed to escape, with the main reason being the official army had a very large number despite being relatively weak. Those heaven ultimate gods from Life and Death Tower and Divine Demon Sect did not bother to chase after them when they scattered and fled. What they cared about most was Jian Wushuang. He had escaped under their noses. He escaped from 3 grand ultimate gods and more than a dozen heaven ultimate gods. Not only did he escape, but had also taken away the interspatial ring storing the blood gems. The Life and Death Tower and Divine Demons Sect were originally here for the interspatial ring. Although they killed the Scorpion King, they did not get the interspatial ring. Damn it! Damn it! Gug, Bai Tu, and Li Qianji stood side by side with extremely gloomy expressions. We had a seamless plan. I thought the Scorpion King would die with none of the Crimson Stone Fort's people able to escape. I also thought we'd definitely get the interspatial ring, but a petty Earth ultimate god actually disrupted our plan. Gug held her hands tightly. They had investigated each heaven ultimate gods in Crimson Stone Fort present to ensure that the plan would go smoothly before carrying out their plan. They had only done so for the heaven ultimate gods and had left out the Earth ultimate gods. Earth ultimate gods were just like ants to them after all. What impact could they have in the battle? Chapter 2649. Escaped. Those 3 grand ultimate gods were surprised that an Earth ultimate god who they had not cared for before ruined their plan. The Earth ultimate god displayed the transmigration world, which allowed the Scorpion King to destroy the formation. The most devastating part was the Earth ultimate god ended up taking the interspatial ring containing the blood gems away, and they could not even chase after him. After a while, "Forgive me. Master, please forgive me." A purple-robed man fearfully knelt while begging for mercy. This person was Jin Yihang. He was afraid of being involved when the war broke out, so he found a mineshaft and hid in it. In the end, he was discovered and brought to face the 3 grand ultimate gods. This person is also from Crimson Stone Fort? Bai Tu glanced at Jin Yihang and said with his indifferent voice, "Yes, Master." He's an inspector from Crimson Stone Fort according to him and is related with Jin Yang, one of the faction leaders in Crimson Stone Fort, replied a heaven ultimate god respectfully. "Oh, Jin Yang's man?" Bai Tu raised his brows and glanced at Jin Yihang again before smiling strangely. Jin Yang was a famous and powerful man in the Crimson Stone Fort as a high-level grand ultimate god, much stronger than the Scorpion King or any of them present. They would have to show Jin Yang some respect if they ever met. Jin Yihang was a joke in comparison. "Answer me, who's Jian Yi? Is he also from Crimson Stone Fort?" Bai Tu asked in a cold voice. "Jian Yi." Jin Yihang was stunned but immediately shook his head. "He's not from Crimson Stone Fort, but the Northern Darkstar Territorial Lord. His official army was guarding the mining sites as those blood gems had appeared within his territory." Territorial Lord? Bai Tu and the other 2 grand ultimate gods exchanged looks. They thought Jian Yi was some super genius from the Sacred Palace. Unexpectedly, Jian Yi was just a territorial lord. How could a territorial lord be so capable? Although Jian Yi is only a territorial lord, he's extremely talented. He was just a peak ultimate god when I first saw him many years ago, who then defeated me as a peak Earth ultimate god in the end. He became a peak Earth ultimate god 5 years ago and fought evenly against a heaven ultimate god from Crimson Stone Fort called Qing Ziyi at one instance before the Scorpion King had to step in. I am unsure the reason, but Scorpion King had personally shown Jian Yi his masterstroke 9 asteroids, said Jin Yihang. He spilled all the beans. A peak ultimate god who defeated a high-level Earth ultimate god and was appreciated by the Scorpion King to the point he showed Jian Yi his masterstroke. Gug, Bai Tu, and Li Qianji looked at each other with solemn expressions. I can be sure that Jian Yi is indeed a genius. They must have been in contact since the Scorpion King showed his masterstroke to Jian Yi. The Scorpion King might have even persuaded him to join the sacred palace. The Scorpion King didn't hesitate to hand the interspatial ring to Jian Yi right before his death and had great confidence in him. Jian Yi will find a way to return it to the Crimson Stone Fort since the interspatial ring has fallen into his hands. He'll most probably hand the ring over to the new fort master, Yin Sua, said Jiuji coldly. We should never let him return to Crimson Stone Fort. Bai Tu bellowed in a low voice. Hunt him down. Do everything possible to find, kill, and retrieve the interspatial ring from him. Li Chenji was full of murderous intent. Do you know Jian Yi's specific origin or who are his associates? Jiuji asked. Jin Yihang honestly answered their every question. It did not take long for many experts from the Life and Death Tower and Divine Demon sect to be sent out. The first place they went was the Territorial Lord Mansion in northern Darkstar territory. A few days later, Zhen Wushuang kept his aura undetected while hiding in a cave which he cracked open in the depths of a dense forest at an unknown distance from the Blood Gems mineral vein. He was holding up a message token in his hand. Shina, are you alright? Zhen Wushuang asked. I'm okay. Xiao Taishin immediately replied to the message. I left the Territorial Lord's mansion and then disguised myself to leave the northern Darkstar territory as soon as I received your message. There were a large number of experts who appeared in the void above the Territorial Lord's mansion not long after I left. There were only a few maids left in the mansion, so the experts could not get anything and left shortly. Well, where's the official army? Zhen Wushuang asked. I've contacted Commander Kang Heng and received news that we didn't lose many people in the army. They have currently been divided into several small groups and are resting in some deserted areas without rushing to return to their camps, said Xiao Taishin. That's good. Zhen Wushuang nodded slightly. The Life and Death Tower and Divine Demon sect are on the lookout for me. I won't return to the northern Darkstar territory for the time being. The official army isn't a threat, so they should be able to return to their camps after those experts from Life and Death Tower and Divine Demon sect leave. However, those experts will try to get you and use you as a threat for me to show up since you're my maid, the person closest to me. You don't have to go back to northern Darkstar territory for now. On the contrary, you shouldn't show up anywhere for the time being and have to disappear. Do you understand? Zhen Wushuang asked. Understood. Xiao Taishin knew what to do. Master, you don't have to worry about me. I'm just a maid after all. The Life and Death Tower and Divine Demon sect won't care too much about me. Master, you have to be very careful. I know. I planned to temporarily leave the northern Darkstar territory and will only be back when I can confidently face the Life and Death Tower and Divine Demon sect. Zhen Wushuang smiled. Zhen Wushuang cut off the transmission after explaining to Xiao Taishin before sighing in the cave. I thought my northern Darkstar territory could finally get some peace once the Blood Gems mining was completed. I can then continue to improve my strength the moment Crimson Stone Fort had taken all of those Blood Gems and left. Who would have thought there will be such a big change? Zhen Wushuang shook his head and sighed. The change had not only affected the Crimson Stone Fort, but also Zhen Wushuang and his official army. He had no choice but to find a way out for himself. In the end, he managed to escape but also ran into big trouble. The experts from Life and Death Tower and Divine Demon sect had seen the Scorpion King handing over the interspatial ring containing all the blood gems to Zhen Wushuang. Would they let him off so easily? Scorpion King, Zhen Wushuang mumbled softly. Zhen Wushuang had a good impression of the Scorpion King. Chapter 2650. 100 million bounty on his head. The Scorpion King happily handed him the 15 divine elixir pill as promised by Crimson Stone Fort when Zhen Wushuang first met him. The Scorpion King had also extended an invitation for Zhen Wushuang to join the Sacred Palace after noticing Zhen Wushuang's great talents. He tried his best to help Zhen Wushuang after learning that Zhen Wushuang was the person chosen by the Crimson Stone Saint and even gave Zhen Wushuang 50 divine elixir pill before also showing Zhen Wushuang his masterstroke. Those 50 divine elixir pill and his masterstroke close-up demonstration were helpful to Zhen Wushuang and he was grateful. Unfortunately, he was helpless at that moment. He could perhaps save the Scorpion King's life if he unscrupulously used his life-rating pressure on those opponents. However, Jian Wushuang knew he could not perform the life-rating pressure again. He knew the Scorpion King would be killed after he escaped, so he could only lament the Scorpion King's death. The least he could do was to hand over the interspatial ring with blood gems to the Crimson Stone Fort Master, Yin Sua. Now that everyone knows the interspatial ring is in my hands, the Life and Death Tower and Divine Demons sect will come after me. Nanwu Palace and Dongfang clan may have also gotten the news and started looking for me. As for the Crimson Stone Fort, I bet they won't be as indifferent and also began looking for me. Jian Wushuang's eyes narrowed slightly. The Crimson Stone Fort had too many factions which were constantly in fierce battles against each other. He had no idea how many factions there were altogether and which of them supported Yin Sua. Under such circumstances, he would not hand over the interspatial ring to the expert or go with that person even if a Crimson Stone Fort's expert found him. Therefore, Jian Wushuang could only think of a way to arrive at the Crimson Stone Fort's lair by himself and meet Yin Sua in person to hand over the interspatial ring. It seems I'll need an escape master plan, murmured Jian Wushuang before he soon left. Half a month later at Longyu City. Longyu City was an extremely unique giant city in the northern Darkstar territory which did not belong to any wilderness, or in other words, the city that was equivalent to a wilderness itself. In the northern Darkstar territory, many spatial passages could be used for spatial transmission, but most of those spatial passages were only good for short-distance transmissions between the wildernesses. There were only 2 larger spatial passages that could handle transmissions between stellar regions. One of those 2 larger spatial passages was in the northern Darkstar continent, which Jian Wushuang used to set off to the Narcissus territory. The other one was located in Longyu City. Many cultivators were gathered in a lively tavern inside of Longyu City. Longyu City was a popular city to cultivators, with some being powerful experts due to its special geographical location and the existence of a spatial passage. Guys, have you heard about the bounty announced not long ago? Several Ultimate God Realm cultivators had gathered and were discussing recent events. I've heard it, of course. The reward was personally issued by several top forces within the Danyang Holy Domain, with the bounty being the Northern Darkstar Territorial Lord. The reward amount is 100 million primordial stones. In addition, this reward isn't for us to kill the Territorial Lord, but just merely provide information. In other words, all we need to do is to report his whereabouts to those top forces who offered the reward if we luckily happen to see the Territorial Lord. We'll be paid 100 million primordial stones once the information has been verified to be correct. Just bumped into him, report his whereabouts, and we'll get 100 million primordial stones? My goodness. Haha. 1 million primordial stones is an astronomical number to ordinary ultimate gods like us. We're talking about 100 million primordial stones. It's crazy. Those top forces are so generous. I wonder how the Territorial Lord offended them. I don't know how, but the Territorial Lord is in trouble now. I can't imagine the number of people eyeing for the 100 million primordial stones bounty on his head. His whereabouts will be reported to the top forces immediately as long as he dares show himself. I'm sure they'll send someone over to kill him as soon as possible. Everyone in the tavern could hear them clearly as those ultimate gods were very loud. Some people reacted to the news with sighs while others were of course delighted. No one noticed a chilly and aloof young man in a black robe was sitting in a corner. This cold and aloof black-robed young man with dark skin had a trace of hostility between his eyebrows. He seemed normal at first glance, but if some powerful expert carefully studied him using the soul power, they would soon discover that his facial muscles were a bit strange. His facial muscles had been deliberately stretched and distorted to change his appearances. In other words, his current appearance was a disguise. The disguise technique was well known but could still probably trick some weaker cultivators. The truth could only be discovered easily by powerful experts using soul power. Would anyone deliberately activate their soul power to investigate someone without any reason in a tavern? The true identity of the cold, aloof, black-robed young man was none other than the Territorial Lord everyone was talking about. It was Jian Wushuang. 100 million primordial stones just for a piece of information. Haha, The Life and Death Tower and Divine Demon sect think very highly of me. Jian Wushuang was leisurely sipping a bowl of wine with a smile on his face. His mood was unaffected by the reward. Not counting the amount of time he had a bounty on his head in his past life, it had also happened quite a few times in his current life as well. It happened once when he was in the saint's tomb located at Wuxia Wilderness, where many sects had jointly offered a reward for his head. The bounty was offered with everyone being aware of his specific location and had to kill him. Meanwhile, the recent bounty announcement had caused an uproar and attracted more powerful experts. In the end, the big world made it too difficult to locate him if he decided to go into hiding. In fact, he was currently seated in a tavern where he was the topic of discussion, but no one even recognized him. They had his portrait and information on his cultivation level, which specifically indicated he was a peak Earth ultimate god. The Life and Death Tower and Divine Demon sect would be surprised to find out that Jian Wushuang's cultivation realm was nowhere near what they thought. He was only a primary level Earth ultimate god. Chapter 2651. In disguise. Jian Wushuang did not deliberately conceal his aura, nor did he use the black stone to disguise his divine power breath. One could easily detect his primary level Earth ultimate god realm had anyone decided to check on him. In addition, his appearance was also deliberately disguised. Who would have thought he was the territorial lord? Jian Wushuang stayed in the tavern for a while before leaving after getting more information from the ultimate gods that were chatting away around him. He went directly to the large spatial passage in Longyu City after leaving the tavern. The spatial passage was on a huge plaza where a large number of cultivators gathered on the plaza and waited in line. Some experts were guarding. There were some experts guarding over the spatial passage near the entrance. Jian Wushuang initially wanted to use this spatial passage for interstellar region transmission, so he could save a lot of traveling time to the Crimson Stone Fort. However, he changed his mind as soon as he arrived at the plaza. The security is too tight with experts hiding in the dark. Jian Wushuang solemnly pondering. His ability to perceive danger was extremely strong and could vaguely sense two gushes of auras hidden in the void nearby after careful inspection. They belonged to Heaven Ultimate Gods, a high-level Heaven Ultimate God. He knew immediately they were experts sent by the Life and Death Tower and Divine Demons sect. The Life and Death Tower and Divine Demons sect probably assumed he would leave the northern Darkstar territory and would possibly use spatial passages. Therefore, they had placed some experts on guard around the two major transmission spatial passages that could travel across the stellar regions. Such experts would then very carefully observe everyone who entered the spatial passages. Jian Wushuang would have attracted attention from the two high-level Heaven Ultimate Gods hidden in the void nearby if he was heedless of the danger and casually entered the spatial passage. Even without using the black stone to disguise my aura, my current divine breath is showing a primary level Earth Ultimate God's divine power. Earth Ultimate Gods are scarce in the entire northern Darkstar territory, so the two high-level Heaven Ultimate Gods will notice me. They'll find out that my appearance has been deliberately disguised if they use their soul power to carefully inspect me, and my whereabouts will most likely be exposed to them. Jian Wushuang thought of the possibilities and made a decision. He immediately turned around and left without looking back. Two figures were standing side by side in the void around the square. They were the two high-level Earth Ultimate Gods who were in hiding. That person over there. He came but turned and left. A red-robed old man squinted at Jian Wushuang's back. The other middle-aged man with purple hair who stood with his hands folded at his back commented, "There's something wrong with his facial muscles. He must have deliberately disguised his appearance, but his aura is very weak at just the primary level Earth Ultimate God." A primary level Earth Ultimate God? The two looked at each other before both shook their heads. Jian Yi, the person they were looking for, could simultaneously contend with three primary-level Heaven Ultimate Gods whilst his cultivation realm had reached the peak Earth Ultimate God realm. Though that primary-level Earth Ultimate God was acting a little weird with his face disguised, he could not possibly be the person they were looking for. The two people then allowed Jian Wushuang to leave undetected right under their noses. Jian Wushuang was secretly mumbling and complaining while walking alone on the streets of Longyu City. The Longyu City spatial passage was guarded by the Heaven Ultimate Gods experts. It could be the same for other places, hence I can't rely on the spatial passage and travel to another stellar region. Although it might take a much longer time to get to the Crimson Stone Fort, it's a lower risk. Although I've been reincarnated in the ancient god domain for decades, I haven't explored this place. It's time for me to check this place out and get to know it. In the northern Darkstar territory, the bounty of 100 million primordial stones was shockingly well sought after, as countless cultivators felt tempted by the reward and frantically searched for the northern Darkstar territorial lord, Gen Yi. The reward was soon no longer limited to the northern Darkstar territory, but the entire Danyang Holy Domain. All stellar regions within the Danyang Holy Domain had announced similar rewards. The entire Danyang Holy Domain was enlivened. However, the northern Darkstar territorial lord seemed to have completely disappeared regardless of how many cultivators went all out searching for him with not even the slightest trace of him. Jian Wushuang's close associates such as Xiao Taishan had also disappeared. Jian Wushuang's parents, on the other hand, were located far away in the Wuxia wilderness. He had never revealed his true origin and was using his pseudonym, Jian Yi, all along. In addition, the Wuxia wilderness was just an unremarkable wilderness that no one paid any attention to, let alone to investigate. Zhuo Yunfeng and Luo Xinqin were unaffected by the incident. Time flew. 10 years had passed in a blink of an eye. On a wide piece of land on Wushui territory, Brother Su Han, let's part here. Come visit me at the Chen Mansion if you have time, yelled a silver-haired young man carrying a long sword. Opposite him was a grim-looking man in a black robe. He took a sip of wine before smiling faintly. Young man, practice hard. You have a long way to go in honing your sword skills. I know, Brother Su Han. The silver-haired boy soon left with his tribe. The grim-looking black-robed man called Su Han was drinking wine while seated on the ground as his eyes flickered. Interesting young man. Su Han was actually Jian Wushuang in disguise. He followed a group of businessmen and encountered the silver-haired young man, Chen Xing, on the way. The very young Chen Xing liked swords and was a little talented in sword principles. Jian Wushuang noticed Chen Xing would often practice sword techniques along the journey. On one occasion, Jian Wushuang had just casually given Chen Xing a tip which he caught on and made great improvement. In the following 2 years, Chen Xing was learning sword techniques from Jian Wushuang. It was a pity that Jian Wushuang could not show much of what he knew to hide his strength. Just a few random pointers from him had benefited the young man who had yet to even reach the chaotic realm. Wushui territory, Wushu continent. Jian Wushuang slowly stood up and looked over at the continent he was on with a strange smile appearing on his face. He soon set off and skimmed toward the city right in the middle of the continent and arrived a few days later at a huge and magnificent stone fort constructed entirely of red quicksand. It was the Star-Picking Pavilion. Chapter 2652. Life Liquid. The Star-Picking Pavilion was the first-ranked chamber of commerce in the 9 realms of Golden Crow. They had more than one branch in the Danyang Holy Domain and had a sub-pavilion of course within the Wushui territory. Jian Wushuang concealed his aura before slowly walking toward the Star-Picking Pavilion. If he deliberately concealed his divine power breath as a perfect chaotic creature, no one would be able to detect his real abilities. A black chief greeted him immediately as soon as he entered the Star-Picking Pavilion. What do you need? The black chief's attitude was rather humble as he must have noticed Jian Wushuang's strength. I want to sell something, said Jian Wushuang. Your Excellency, please come with me. The black chief brought Jian Wushuang to a secret room covered by a restriction shield. The black chief asked, what do you want to sell? I'm afraid you can't make a decision regarding the items I'm going to sell, said Jian Wushuang. The black chief was not annoyed at all and smiled instead. If that's the case, please wait a moment while I get the Golden Chief. Jian Wushuang nodded slightly. It did not take long for a Golden Chief to appear in front of Jian Wushuang after the Black Chief's departure. The Golden Chief was a graceful and beautiful woman. The beautiful woman gently asked, my name is Chen Qin and I'm the Golden Chief. Your Excellency, how shall I address you? Jian Wushuang replied, Su Han. What treasures do you wish to sell, Master Su Han? Chen Qin humbly asked. I want to sell 2 items. The first is this. Jian Wushuang flipped his hand and took out a green jade bottle which exuded a strong breath of life with a drop of green liquid in it. It was life liquid. This is, as soon as the beautiful woman called Chen Qin saw the green liquid drop, she narrowed her eyes. Is this life liquid? Life liquid? Jian Wushuang raised his brows. He got the green liquid from killing a golden chief of the star-picking pavilion Yuan Lei in the Narcissus territory previously. Jian Wushuang had only noticed the treasure was extraordinary but did not know the treasure's name or how valuable it was. He was still unaware the green liquid drop was called the life liquid until that moment. Life liquid contains majestic vitality which can restore a person's vitality in a short time if a seriously injured or dying cultivator consumes it. It's also used as an ingredient for elixir pill refinement in many life-saving elixir pills. In addition, this life liquid is also of great use to cultivators who understand the vitality law. One will be able to work seamlessly with the vitality law if they drink this. It also contains vitality law essence, hence can also be used purely as a meditative treasure. It's indeed a very rare and precious treasure in short. I'll purchase it for 300 million primordial stones if Master Su Han is willing to sell this to the star-picking pavilion, said Chen Qin. Jian Wushuang was astonished. He knew that life liquid was extraordinary, but had not expected it to be so valuable. 300 million primordial stones. The heavenly treasure offensive divine soul weapon was only sold for 100 million primordial stones. This golden chief knows quite a fair bit. I wonder how Yuan Lei got the life liquid. Jian Wushuang groaned but immediately spoke, I don't need primordial stones. I only need the divine elixir pill. I wonder how many divine elixir pills can the life liquid be exchanged for? Exchange for divine elixir pills? Chen Qin furrowed her brows slightly and she replied after a long time, Master Su Han, this life liquid is very valuable. Hence if you can indeed change for divine elixir pill if you wish. However, unlike the primordial stone divine elixir pills are hard to get. I don't have many in the sub-pavilion, so I can only replace a portion with divine elixir pills using a higher primordial stones exchange ratio. How much can I get? Jian Wushuang asked. This life liquid is worth 300 million primordial stones, but if you want to get some divine elixir pills, I can give you 20 divine elixir pills in addition to 100 million primordial stones, said Chen Qin. Jian Wushuang was stunned. The market price for a divine elixir pill was 5 million primordial stones, but that was the exchange price for divine elixir pills to primordial stones. It was not as simple for the other way round, which was to exchange primordial stones for divine elixir pills. The life liquid valued at 300 million primordial stones could only be exchanged for 20 divine elixir pills and 100 million primordial stones. That 20 divine elixir pills was equivalent to 200 million primordial stones, with the ratio used being 10 million primordial stones to 1 divine elixir pill. I wonder if Master Su Han is willing to proceed with the exchange? Chen Qin smiled and peered at Jian Wushuang. Yes, I am. Jian Wushuang did not hesitate. Primordial stones were of no use to him and he needed the divine elixir pill. Although 20 divine elixir pill was not much, it was enough to increase his divine power by several folds. I have another treasure here which should be more precious than the life liquid. Jian Wushuang smiled before flipping his hand and taking out an item. It was a thumb-sized scarlet blood gem. The scarlet blood gem seems ordinary at first glance. However, the Golden Chief was so observant that she could recognize the extraordinary blood gem at a glance. It's a royal blood gem. Chen Qin had always maintained a dainty and graceful posture, but her face instantly changed after seeing the royal blood gem. She was shocked by the treasure Jian Wushuang took out. Is it really the royal blood gem? Chen Qin stared at the treasure while her insides were perturbing. Royal blood gems were the main material used to refine holy treasures. It was invaluable not only to ultimate gods but even some haughty undying saints. Undying saints who wanted to refine a piece of holy treasure often paid a great price in search of royal blood gems. Such a precious and rare refinement material had unexpectedly appeared in front of Chen Qin. Master Su Han. Chen Qin looked at Jen Wushuang again with a completely different gaze than before. You should know the function of this royal blood gem. It's an extremely rare treasure. Do you really want to sell it to the star-picking pavilion? Chen Qin was doubtful. That was a royal blood gem after all. Even though it was only thumb-sized, its weight must be at least 10 catties, which was still worth a frightening sum. The most important issue was not its high value, but the difficulty in finding it, as one could only stumble upon it by luck. Chapter 2653, High-Level Earth Ultimate God. I'll just sell it off, but I want only divine elixir pills for this and not a single primordial stones, replied Jen Wushuang flatly. Please wait for a moment in that case. I have to discuss with the supervisor to determine the final purchase price, said Chen Qin before she turned and left. Purchasing 10 catties of royal blood gem was not something a golden chief could call the shots. In a dimly lit room, royal blood gem, the purple-robed supervisor of the star-picking pavilion looked solemn. This is the main refinement material for holy treasures. Some among Danyang Holy Domain's top forces may keep some royal blood gems for possible future demands, yet we have someone that wants to sell his royal blood gem to us now. This must be our lucky day. Master, the royal blood gem weighs around 10 catties. I don't know how much we should pay for it, explained Chen Qin. The purple-robed supervisor asked. He insisted on trading it only for divine elixir pills, right? Chen Qin confirmed, yes. We can only trade up to 300 divine elixir pills in this sub-pavilion. It's obviously not enough to pay for the 10 catties of royal blood gems. I'll immediately send a message to headquarters and ask them to send us more divine elixir pills. We can offer him 500 divine elixir pills, but he has to wait a few days, said the purple-robed supervisor. 500 divine elixir pills? Isn't it too little? Chen Qin puzzledly asked. Indeed, 500 divine elixir pills aren't enough, but Su Han is probably in dire need of some divine elixir pills. Otherwise, he won't put up something so precious for sale. 500 divine elixir pills may seem slightly less, but he should agree as long as he urgently needs it. If that doesn't work, then add in some primordial stones, suggested the purple-robed supervisor. All right. Chen Qin nodded. She returned to the secret chamber Jen Wushuang was located after a while. Master Su Han, I've discussed with the supervisor in charge, and the star-picking pavilion is willing to purchase this with 500 divine elixir pills, said Chen Qin. 500 divine elixir pills? Jen Wushuang narrowed his eyes. He knew the royal blood gem was a rare find and it should be worth more than just 500 divine elixir pills. As he had not come across anyone who urgently needed royal blood gems, so he could only sell it to the star-picking pavilion since 500 divine elixir pills were of great use to him under such circumstances. If Master Su Han thinks the price is too low, star-picking pavilion can top up the offer with 1 billion primordial stones. Chen Qin continued. Perhaps you might not be aware of this, but each sub-pavilion has a limited amount of divine elixir pills. We have to get help from headquarters to send us these 500 divine elixir pills. However, the operation of the star-picking pavilion's operations might be affected if we give out too many divine elixir pills at once. I understand. It'll take 500 divine elixir pills and 1 billion primordial stones. Jen Wushuang was decisive. That's great. Master Su Han, can you wait for a few days? Chen Qin asked. Yes. Jen Wushuang replied with a faint smile. Chen Qin quickly turned and left. There was a wicked smile on her face when she turned around as she was laughing surreptitiously in her heart. Su Han probably has no idea how rare this royal blood gem is, and the price of 500 divine elixir pills and 1 billion primordial stones is ridiculously low. In her opinion, the price offered by the star-picking pavilion was absolutely the lowest in the market. People who are aware of the royal blood gem's value would never sell it, but Su Han agreed to their price. Was he not stupid? She did not know that Jen Wushuang was willing to sell due to his urgency in needing divine elixir pills to improve his strength, but more importantly, he had more of those royal blood gems with him. He had obtained 3 royal blood gems from the mineral vein and the 10 catties were the smallest in size. He could not be bothered and gave up on the petty 10 catties since he had 2 other bigger pieces at hand. Jian Wushuang waited quietly for 5 days in the sub-pavilion until Chen Qin went looking for him again. Master Su Han, here are a total of 520 divine elixir pills and 1,100,000,000 primordial stones in this interspatial ring. You can check on it. Chen Qin handed an interspatial ring to Jian Wushuang. He did a quick check with his mind power and nodded after Jian Wushuang took it. In return, he handed over the 10 catties of royal blood gem and life liquid to Chen Qin. Master Su Han, it's been a pleasure to trade with you. Chen Qin smiled. Goodbye. Jian Wushuang bid farewell and left. After coming out of the star-picking pavilion, Jian Wushuang immediately found a secluded secret chamber and sat cross-legged in it. The strong-scented divine elixir pills were suspended in front of Jian Wushuang. 520 divine elixir pills. Jian Wushuang was excited. He had only used around 20 divine elixir pills when he made a breakthrough from Peak Ultimate God Realm to Primary Level Earth Ultimate God Realm. He then took the 50 divine elixir pills given by Scorpion King during his time at the Blood Gem Mineral Vein. In addition to his divine power accumulation from many years of self-cultivation, Jian Wushuang estimated that he would need slightly more than 100 divine elixir pills to make a breakthrough to the high-level Earth Ultimate God Realm. Well, let's get started. Jian Wushuang wasted no time as he immediately began to swallow and refine those divine elixir pills at an incredibly fast speed. Any normal ultimate god might take a long time to absorb and refine more than 100 divine elixir pills. On the other hand, Jian Wushuang only had to spend a month refining those 120 divine elixir pills. Thereafter, he managed to make a breakthrough from Primary Level Earth Ultimate God to the High-Level Earth Ultimate God Realm. The breakthrough in the cultivation realm had greatly increased Jian Wushuang's divine power and skyrocketed his overall strength. Jian Wushuang did not stop after the breakthrough but continued to swallow and absorb more divine elixir pills until he completely used up the remaining 400 divine elixir pills. Those 400 divine elixir pills had allowed him to accumulate more divine power and brought him a lot closer to the Peak Earth Ultimate God Realm. Jian Wushuang slowly opened his eyes in the secret chamber and felt his surge of power. My divine power has skyrocketed again and I'll need even more divine elixir pills to improve my cultivation realm. At my current level, I should now be able to wipe out any primary level heaven ultimate gods such that even battling against a high-level heaven ultimate god is a walk in the park for me. My winning probability is greatly enhanced if I include my many secret techniques. In terms of improving my law understanding, I can do so with the help from Fengtian Scroll to progress at a steady speed. Now, what should I do with my sword principles? Jian Wushuang had reached the peak of merit level in Sword World and was only one step away from the profound level of Sword World. However, that one step was not easy to cross over. Chapter 2654. Profound Sword World. My sword world stretches for 100,000 miles as it's the most perfect and powerful sword world capable of competing against profound principle worlds and even suppresses them despite only achieving the merit level. However, my sword world might not be of much use against profound principle worlds that are capable of expanding to similar size. My sword principle understanding is still too low after all. I have to find ways and improve it as soon as possible to the profound sword world. Jian Wushuang murmured. He had been improving at a terrifying rate. His fast-paced progress was mainly due to his understanding of laws and principles being far ahead of his cultivation realm. His cultivation realm was progressing at an astonishing speed, so he would naturally have to improve his laws and principles understanding as soon as possible. The most important matter for him was to achieve the profound sword world. I'm still in the Wuxire territory and it might take decades from here to the Danyang continent where the Crimson Stone Fort lair is located without using the spatial passage. I'm afraid I might not make any further progress in my cultivation realm during this time, so I should focus on understanding laws and principles. Jian Wushuang clasped his hands together and made up his mind. Jian Wushuang soon set off on his journey again. While he was on the road, he continued meditating on his laws and sword principles. Although the journey was quite boring, Jian Wushuang had long been used to it. Time flew and 28 years had passed in a flash. 28 years was nothing for Jian Wushuang in his previous life but was considered a long time in his current life. In a vast void, dozens of guards were slowly moving forward while escorting 3 people seated on a huge beast. They were very young and dressed in luxurious clothes, obviously coming from rich families. The dozens of guards were powerful, with many of them being Earth ultimate gods, and the rest were above the ultimate god realm. Among these guards stood a cold and proud man in a black robe. The cold and arrogant black-robed man was skimming forward with his eyes closed. He was meditating at his own pace. The world evolves, life evolves. This is the essence of the principal world. It's the same with the sword world. Jian Wushuang mumbled in his heart, and very slowly he opened his eyes. The sword world coming from his body had made great changes the moment he opened his eyes. The change was unnoticeable on the external, but its internal and essential structure was no longer the same. I've understood the profound sword world. Jian Wushuang was beaming. He had achieved Merit Sword World a long time ago. He had been meditating on his way from northern Darkstar territory up to where he currently was, and spent most of his decades in learning the laws and sword principle. His understanding of space-time and transmigration laws had greatly improved. Finally, he made a breakthrough in sword principle and achieved profound sword world. All the little signs of progress he made had contributed to a huge improvement to his overall strength. Brother Su Han. A handsome young man who was walking beside Jian Wushuang looked over. I see you're smiling so happily. Did something good happen? No, nothing. I just happened to understand something. Jian Wushuang smiled. The handsome young man smiled and said, That's something good, I senti it. I really admire your cultivation progress and strength improvement obtained amidst our travels. Jian Wushuang replied with a wide beam. Without warning. Boom. Boom. A scary burst of aura emerged from the void in front before a large number of people started charging toward them at an astonishing speed. The escort team was in chaos. What's the matter? Is it a robbery? Would ordinary bandits have the guts to rob us? Besides, we're already on the edge of the Danyang continent. How can there be any bandits? Who are these people? Hundreds of people appeared in front of the escort team amidst the sounds of anger. Among the hundreds of people, there were more than 20 Earth ultimate gods, with the remaining being powerful ultimate gods. The most important matter was the opponent even had 3 peak Earth ultimate gods. Such a powerful lineup could ravage the entire escort team at any time. Haha, the young man from the Mu clan. Don't think that we can't find you if you hide in an escort team. We'll send you to hell, sneered the peak Earth ultimate god who was leading. Bastard. A scowling handsome young man moved forward while shouted sternly as he stared angrily at the hundreds of cultivators arriving in front of him. He was none other than the young man talking to Jian Wushuang. Can't that person let me go, since I'm already in such a miserable state? Haha, the master has ordered us to bring your corpse back, so you must die. Boom. Those people immediately attacked. Jian Wushuang, who was among the escort team, rolled his eyes slightly as those people made a move. He knew what was happening in front of him. He had experienced the same event way too many times in his previous and current life. I've achieved the profound sword world and the Danyang continent is just up front. I should leave now, murmured Jian Wushuang. The next second. Hum. A shocking wave of sword intent swept across as a profound sword world appeared and pressed down on the hundreds of cultivators before him. Although the hundreds of cultivators were Earth ultimate gods, with some being peak Earth ultimate gods, they went wide-eyed after feeling the pressure on them. Numerous apparitions started appearing at the same time. There were at least a few thousand apparitions. Each of those apparitions looked the same, from their bodies' divine power breath to even their sword-holding postures. Thereafter, only their sword shadows were visible among the crowd, as no one could single out the true person's form from those few thousands of apparitions. Everything was back to normal again in less than a breath's time. The sword world with sky-shattering sword intent receded alongside the few thousand apparitions' disappearances. The hundreds of cultivators had astonished expressions on their faces as the lively gleam in their eyes faded away as their bodies fell dead at that moment. On the other hand, the person who attacked already disappeared. The escort team members as well as the handsome young man froze at the spot in horror. Su Han. Brother Su Han? Chapter 2655, 7 Major Factions. The Danyang continent was located at the center of the Danyang Holy Domain and also the place where many top forces in the Danyang Holy Domain gathered. In other Danyang Holy Domain stellar regions, ordinary ultimate gods were considered experts, and a considerably powerful Earth ultimate gods could easily become the territorial lord or a despot. However, matters were not the same on the Danyang continent, as an Earth ultimate god was nothing. Even a Heaven ultimate god was only considered ordinary within the Danyang continent, with only grand ultimate gods hailed as expert. There were plenty of grand ultimate gods in the Danyang continent, with top forces having a few of them. Jian Wushuang disguised himself and sat in a tavern while examining a piece of newly acquired information at hand. The intelligence report contained detailed information about Danyang continent's various forces, including those top main forces. The Danyang continent, or rather the entire Danyang Holy Domain, had a total of 5 top forces. First was the renowned Crimson Stone Fort. Although the Crimson Stone Fort was not what it used to be after Crimson Stone Saint's death, with its overall strength greatly weakened, they were still the official governor of Danyang Holy Domain. The body of a starved camel was still bigger than a horse. No one dared to underestimate Crimson Stone Fort's true powers. The other top forces were Nanwu Palace, Divine Demon Sect, Life and Death Tower, and Dongfang Clan. Those 4 top forces were similar in terms of strength, with each having nearly 10 grand ultimate gods and many heaven ultimate gods under their command. They were deeply rooted with strong and powerful backgrounds. The Nanwu Palace was probably ranked first among those 4 forces. The Nanwu Palace Master was considered by many to be the current strongest expert in the Danyang Holy Domain and also the most promising candidate among numerous experts in the Danyang Holy Domain to reach the Undying Saint realm. Therefore, the Nanwu Palace Master was awe-inspiring to many. Just like in the Narcissus territory when the various forces fought fiercely over the Huangji Golden Pill, grand ultimate gods were even involved in the battle. Although the top forces dared to kill Nanwu Palace's heaven ultimate gods, none would dare do anything to the Nanwu Young Palace Master, which only showed how much they were weary of Nanwu Palace. The top sects were truly extraordinary, as any one of them could easily come up with 10 grand ultimate gods. Jian Wushuang was secretly applauding. Jian Wushuang then carefully looked at the Crimson Stone Fort. Among those other top forces, he was most concerned about the Crimson Stone Fort. In the end, he had promised the Crimson Stone Saint to help his daughter Yin Sua. Moreover, the interspatial ring that Scorpion King gave him was still in his hands. Goodness, I knew that the Crimson Stone Fort was divided with many factions within, but I didn't expect there would be so many factions within this Crimson Stone Fort, a total of 7. Jian Wushuang glanced at the intelligence report in his hand and was marveled. There were indeed 7 different factions within the current Crimson Stone Fort. Those 7 powerful factions were led by their leaders fighting for their interests. Among the 7 factions, 3 were extremely powerful and most sought after for the resources they controlled. They were the 3 major factions. One of those 3 major factions was controlled by the current Crimson Stone Fort Master, Yin Sua. Yin Sua was indeed the current Fort Master, since she was extremely powerful on top of being Crimson Stone Saint's biological daughter. Yin Sua showed great talent when the Crimson Stone Saint was still alive and became a grand ultimate god at a young age, with a great chance of making a breakthrough to the Undying Saint realm. It was a pity that Crimson Stone Saint died. All kinds of internal and external issues struck at the same time after she took over the management as the new Fort Master. Facing those tremendous pressures only further solidified her breakthrough bottleneck, as she had stopped advancing for a while with her cultivation journey stagnant in place. Although she later still made a breakthrough and reached the peak Grand Ultimate God with only 1 step away from the Undying Saint realm, she was already stagnant for a long time. The possibility of her making a breakthrough and become an Undying Saint at that moment was extremely low. Many people thought she would never be able to make a future breakthrough. Most of them thought the probability of Nanwu Palace Master making a breakthrough to the Undying Saint realm was much higher than her. Although she did not make a breakthrough to the Undying Saint realm, the power and deterrence effect of a peak Grand Ultimate God was nevertheless amazing. Moreover, she was also the legitimate Fort Master, hence many experts chose to support her, so the factions she managed were the leader of the top 3 major factions. In addition to her being the peak Grand Ultimate God, she also managed 6 Grand Ultimate Gods of varying strength levels. Even though Yin Suo had lost one of her assistants when the Scorpion King died, her control over the faction was still extremely powerful. In addition, Crimson Stone Fort's Sacred Palace was dedicated to cultivating talented and powerful people completely under the control of Yin Suo. The Sacred Palace Master was the right-hand man of Yin Suo who possessed greater strength than Scorpion King. She has 6 Grand Ultimate Gods in her faction including Yin Suo. It's noteworthy that she's a peak Grand Ultimate God and in control of really amazing matters such as the Sacred Palace, murmured Jian Wushuang before checking out the other 2 big factions. As for the other 2 big factions, one of them was controlled by Crimson Stone Fort Great Elder Yun Shan while the other by the Crimson Stone Army Commander, the Blood Thunder King. Yun Shan was also a peak Grand Ultimate God who went with the Crimson Stone Saint and set up the Crimson Stone Fort. Both of them were brothers. During Crimson Stone Fort's peak, Crimson Stone Saint sat awe-inspiring in control of the Crimson Stone Fort while the Great Elder Yun Shan was the one handling day-to-day operation and gathered a large number of subordinates over time. After the Crimson Stone Saint's death, the order for Yin Suo to inherit the fort master position was given. Although Yun Shan was receptive to the arrangement on the surface, he secretly tried and used many methods to stop it. The appearance of Crimson Stone Fort's many factions started at that time with Yun Shan as their leader. Yun Shan was a peak Grand Ultimate God and he had 6 Grand Ultimate Gods under him. In addition, he controlled most of the cultivation resources in the Crimson Stone Fort such that even Yin Suo had to get Yun Shan's consent and even beg him when she needed some cultivation resources. To put it bluntly, Yun Shan is an old sly fox who exercises control with artifice, said Jian Wushuang secretly. He then looked at the last of the top 3 factions which were led by the Blood Thunder King. The Blood Thunder King was not powerful when compared to Yin Suo and Yun Shan at just a high-level Grand Ultimate God, but he managed the strongest faction among the 3 major factions. Chapter 2656. Before the Sacred Palace Crimson Stone Army. They were the ones who opened up and expanded the territory across the 9 realms of Golden Crow for Crimson Stone Saint. There were 1,000 people in the army when Crimson Stone Fort was at its peak with all of those powerful people being the Heaven Ultimate God realm. Although Crimson Stone Fort had fallen, the most powerful lineup and combat power of the Crimson Stone Fort still gathered under the Crimson Stone Army with the lowest soldier grade in the Crimson Stone Army at peak Earth Ultimate God. They had a large number of Heaven Ultimate Gods on top of 10 Grand Ultimate Gods in the Crimson Stone Army. All those were completely under the Blood Thunder King's control, which explained the reason Blood Thunder King dared to challenge both Yin Suo and Yun Shan. In addition to those 3 major factions, the other 4 smaller factions were not weak either, with most of them having 2 or 3 Grand Ultimate Gods controlling their resources and were influential. Among the 7 major factions, there are 3 large factions and 4 smaller factions who compete against each other for their interests and occasionally cause wars and incessant internal friction. Such is the situation in the current Crimson Stone Fort. Jian Wushuang secretly concluded admiringly. The Crimson Stone Fort was indeed in a very chaotic situation. However, that did not undermine the amazing power possessed by the Crimson Stone Fort. There were more than 20 Grand Ultimate Gods altogether in the 3 big factions, and after adding up the ones from the 4 smaller factions, Crimson Stone Fort had 35 Grand Ultimate Gods in total, including both Yin Suo and Yun Shan, the 2 peak Grand Ultimate Gods. Their combat power was much stronger than that of Nanwu Palace. The amount of Grand Ultimate Gods added up from the 4 top powers, Nanwu Palace, Divine Demon Sect, Life and Death Tower, and Dongfang Clan, were only a few more than that of Crimson Stone Fort. However, the strength within Crimson Stone Fort was divided and scattered with the factions not united, which led to the current precarious status of Crimson Stone Fort. It was conceivable that those top forces had absolutely no fear of Crimson Stone Fort, since the Life and Death Tower and Divine Demon Sect even dared to slay the Scorpion King and rob Crimson Stone Fort of their resources. If Yin Suo wants to completely change the situation in Danyang Holy Domain and bring it back to life, She has to find a way to settle the internal friction and integrates all the other 6 factions in Crimson Stone Fort before concentrating all their strengths to control the 4 top forces: Nanwu Palace, Divine Demon Sect, Life and Death Tower, and Dongfang Clan. She had to eliminate them one by one to completely wipe out her worries. However, it may not be easy to accomplish all this unless she can make a breakthrough to the Undying Saint realm, said Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang knew that Yin Suo would have resolved it long ago if Crimson Stone Fort's internal conflict was so easy to resolve. She would not have helplessly allowed it to drag on, and neither would the Crimson Stone Saint paid a great price to get him to assist Yin Suo. No matter what, I have to find a way to meet Yin Suo in person, thought Jian Wushuang carefully. However, Yin Suo was the Crimson Stone Fort master and a super expert at Peak Grand Ultimate God Realm. It would not be easy to visit her. Jian Wushuang was merely an Earth Ultimate God to which no one would pay attention had he openly gone to the Crimson Stone Fort and sought a meeting. They might kick him out or even worse, kill him. If he declared his identity and made himself known as Jian Yi, he could not guarantee the first person to meet him was Yin Suo. It might be Yun Shan or the Blood Thunder King who found him first among the many factions in Crimson Stone Fort. It's unrealistic for me to meet Yin Suo directly. However, I can find a way to first meet the expert next to her, such as the Sacred Palace Master, and get him to help me send a message to Yin Suo. Jian Wushuang smiled indifferently and made a decision. The Sacred Palace was a special place Crimson Stone Fort used to train talented people. It was once a genius concentration camp within the Danyang Holy Domain where countless geniuses and young cultivators in the Danyang Holy Domain desired to gain admittance. However, the strength of the Crimson Stone Fort had dwindled since the fall of the Crimson Stone Saint. Therefore, the Sacred Palace was no longer as attractive as it used to be for those geniuses and cultivators. There were also similar places within the top forces like Nanwu Palace and Divine Demon Sect, who were specialized in cultivating talented people as good as the Sacred Palace. Even so, the Sacred Palace still attracted quite a fair bit of younger cultivators. A huge and towering mountain stood tall in the center of Danyang Holy Domain. The 100,000-foot-tall mountain that reached into the clouds was surrounded by a powerful restrictive shield that could withstand the powerful strength of an undying saint. The Sacred Palace was located where the giant mountain was. Many Sacred Palace disciples lived at the top of that huge mountain all year round with countless attics and palaces with ample training resources. At the top of the mountain was a huge green stairway that spanned from the mountain top to the foot of the mountain. This stairway was called the Sacred Heaven Road. The Sacred Palace was where geniuses gathered, and not anyone was able to enter the Sacred Palace for cultivation, hence there were only 2 ways to join the Sacred Palace. The first method was to get a recommendation from one of those top experts in the Crimson Stone Fort and pass the Sacred Palace's test before becoming a disciple of Sacred Palace. The second method was to climb the Sacred Heaven Road. Any cultivators below the Grand Ultimate God realm, even a Peak Heaven Ultimate God, would try climbing the Sacred Heaven Road. The cultivator had to start from the first step and walked up step by step. He would be accepted into the Sacred Palace so long the cultivator was able to reach the top of Sacred Heaven Road within 10 years. If a cultivator failed to reach the top within 10 years, they would have to walk down and start from the first step again. The second method to go through the Sacred Heaven Road was the most difficult between the 2 methods. However, people who entered the Sacred Palace using this method were usually more talented and powerful. Many younger cultivators were having great difficulty threading the Sacred Heaven Road. Most of those cultivators were talented and powerful, with the majority having reached the Earth Ultimate God realm with only very few Ultimate Gods. As for the Heaven Ultimate Gods, there were none. Cultivators below Grand Ultimate Gods were able to enter the Sacred Palace. However, the Sacred Palace was of very little benefit to Heaven Ultimate Gods because many cultivation resources in the Sacred Palace had very weak effects on Heaven Ultimate Gods. Therefore, cultivators who had reached the Heaven Ultimate God realm would normally choose not to join the Sacred Palace or any other cultivation places. Is that the Sacred Palace? Jian Wushuang could see the countless attics and palaces at the mountain top from where he was standing at the huge mountain foot. He did not try to hide his divine power breath, nor did he try to disguise it with the black stone, and was clearly showing the aura of a high-level Earth Ultimate God. Chapter 2657, Sacred Heaven Road. Jian Wushuang walked toward the Sacred Heaven Road without hesitation. He soon set foot on the first step of the Sacred Heaven Road. Jian Wushuang immediately sensed a decent oppressive force on him as soon as he arrived at the first step. Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes. Is this all? No, it shouldn't be that simple. Jian Wushuang did not stop and continued walking up step by step. The oppressive force on him was getting stronger as he gradually progressed up those steps. However, the oppressive force did not affect Jian Wushuang at all, nor did it slow down his pace. The Sacred Heaven Road had 1,000 steps in total. Jian Wushuang soon arrived on the 99th step, and when he stepped on the 100th step, the world surrounding Jian Wushuang began to change as he soon arrived in a vast limitless dark void with a tall figure standing before him while solemnly staring at him. You have to stay with me for 10 breaths before you can move on. A cold voice came from the tall figure. Consciousness space. Jian Wushuang was surprised as a smile spread on his face. Jian Wushuang was on the 100th step only for a brief moment before he continued to step toward the 101st step. The consciousness space test was based on one's cultivation realm, hence the test was set at a similar level for Jian Wushuang was only a high-level Earth Ultimate God and allowed him to pass without much difficulty. He was moving all the way up at a very fast pace. In just a few moments, he had already arrived on the 700th step without even slowing down. There were still many young cultivators who were walking upward with difficulty on the Sacred Heaven Road. The region between 700th and 900th steps had dozens of young cultivators, with most of them stuck on their own steps as the difficulty drastically increased upon every step upward. On the 750th step, a dark-skinned young man wrapped in animal skins was standing there trembling under the huge oppressive force on his body, but gritted his teeth and endured it. The 750th step is already my limit. I can only try to adapt slowly and find a way to set foot on the 751st step. The young man wrapped in animal skins grunted in a low voice. Suddenly, whoosh! A figure appeared beside him. The young man wrapped in animal skins immediately turned his head to look. I haven't seen this person before. When did he arrive behind me? The young man wrapped in animal skins was puzzled, but could see that man did not even stop as he continued stepping onto the 751st step before continuing to step onto the 752nd step. The young man wrapped in animal skins was taken aback. What? The oppressive force is already very terrifying at the 750th steps. His speed would have been forced to slow down no matter how good a cultivator is, but he was still advancing fast. It seems as though he is unaffected by the oppressive force at all. Many other young cultivators on the Sacred Heaven Road had also noticed the existence of the cold and proud man in the black robe other than him. He was none other than Jian Wushuang. Look at that person. He's so fast. He has already reached the 790th steps, but is still advancing fast. The 800th step. Everyone held their breath as they watched him. Every 100th step on the Sacred Heaven Road had a test in the consciousness space. The test was very difficult, with many geniuses unable to pass the 800th step test, with most needing to be stuck on it for a long time even if they were able to pass. Jian Wushuang merely stopped briefly before continuing to step forward onto the 801st step, to everyone's surprise, after reaching the 800th step. How's this possible? This is impossible. Many cultivators on the Sacred Heaven Road were in disbelief. The 800th step consciousness space test did not even stop that person's speed. What's going on? It basically meant that he only needed less than 10 breaths to survive in the consciousness space test and probably had instantaneously defeated his opponent. They could sense that person's divine power breath at the high-level Earth Ultimate God. It would not come as no surprise for a high-level Earth Ultimate God to go up against an opponent at the peak Earth Ultimate God on the 800th step. However, that man had instantly defeated his opponent. In other words, his true combat strength was definitely higher and perhaps might have reached the peak Earth Ultimate God realm despite being only a high-level Earth Ultimate God. He must be quite strong even among peak Earth ultimate gods. He was capable of challenging higher realm cultivators. The man turned out to be an expert in challenging cultivators stronger than himself. The man did not slow down at all after passing the 800th step. The increasing oppressive pressure force seemed to not affect him at all as he continued to climb at an extremely fast pace. He soon reached the 850th, 880th, and 900th step. At the 900th step, he was once again caught in the consciousness space test that was even more difficult than the previous. The result was the same nonetheless. The man only paused for a brief moment before continuing on to the 901st step. This, many young cultivators on the Sacred Heaven Road were completely stunned. They could not believe what they saw. Jian Wushuang continued to move upward with ease under their incomprehensible gazes and in just a jiffy stepped on the last step, the 1000th step. Even on the very last step, he was not bothered by the hindrances and had easily crossed over, finally reaching the top end of Sacred Heaven Road. He got to the top. Did he just effortlessly climb to the top of Sacred Heaven Road? I feel like Hez just sauntering and unaffected by the tests. Who's this person? Many young cultivators still struggling on the steps looked up at Jian Wushuang, who had already reached the mountain top with widened eyes. At the mountain top, Jian Wushuang looked at the densely arranged attics and palaces before him with a weird smile on his face. I've been rather high profile by so effortlessly climbing up the mountain. It's impossible to not catch the attention of Sacred Heaven Palace's experts, but I'm unsure if I've caught the palace masters. Jian Wushuang secretly thought. Chapter 2658, Sacred Palace Keeper at the top of a grandiose and lavish black penthouse in Sacred Palace. A slender, tall, and blonde middle-aged man sat next to a desk, reading a jade slip casually. A silver-haired old man in a white robe entered hastily. Palace Keeper, we just received news that someone is coming our way through Sacred Heaven Road, said the old man. Oh, the Sacred Palace is accepting a new genius disciple, that's great. The blonde middle-aged man answered casually, but his eyes were still on the jade slip. The thing is, the time he spent reaching the summit from Sacred Heaven Road was too short, said the white-robed old man anxiously. Too short? How short? The blonde middle-aged man finally put down the jade slip and looked downward. The white-robed old man took a deep breath and slowly showed one finger. A year. The blonde man nodded slightly. If he can reach the peak in a year, that's pretty good. Not 1 year. The old man shook his head. A month then. The blonde man's face began to turn serious. Sacred Palace has countless geniuses, but those who can reach the summit in a month could be counted with one hand. Geniuses like this are worth our total support and nurture. No, sir, not a month either. But, before the old man finished, don't tell me he only spent a day? The blonde middle-aged man stood up suddenly, his eyes were shining. No. Not a day, but 1 hour. That man spent less than an hour on the Sacred Heaven Road to reach the peak. The white-robed old man finally finished his sentence. How's that possible? Even the blonde middle-aged man, a top expert among the high-level grand ultimate gods and also the respectable Sacred Palace Keeper, was shocked when he heard such news. Reaching the summit through Sacred Heaven Road within an hour? One had to understand that the Crimson Stone Saint had sacrificed a lot of effort when he was still alive to build the Sacred Heaven Road as a means to pick disciples for Sacred Palace. There were incredibly difficult challenges along Sacred Heaven Road such that those who could get through within a year were considered very skillful geniuses. If a month, a top genius. One who spent 1 day was simply a super freak. There was not anyone who could reach the summit through Sacred Heaven Road in a mere day since the Sacred Palace's establishment a long time ago. Spending less than 1 hour, that was unimaginable. Where's he now? The blonde middle-aged man seemed to be very excited. He has reached the summit and is now at Sacred Palace's plaza, said the white-haired old man wearing white robes. Let's go, bring me to him, said the blonde man immediately. Crazy. A super freak who only spent less than 1 hour to reach the summit. Such a super freak was of course worth a personal greeting by the Sacred Palace Keeper. Jian Wushuang stood there with his arms folded on the gigantic plaza at the Sacred Palace. Numerous Sacred Palace disciples were surrounding him along with some Sacred Palace experts. All of them were staring at Jian Wushuang while quietly discussing among themselves. It's him. I was beside the Sacred Heaven Road just now and saw him stepping on the first step of Sacred Heaven Road to head upwards. He had reached the top of Sacred Heaven Road and came into the Sacred Palace in less than an hour. Not even an hour? You've got to be joking. How come he can move so quickly? Sacred Heaven Road is very difficult, especially the consciousness space challenge. He probably used incredible force to defeat them instead of finding a way to pass through his 10 opponents. However, according to my knowledge of the last consciousness space 1000th step challenge, his opponents were all super strong peak Earth ultimate gods. He managed to defeat them. Although he's only a high-level Earth ultimate god, his battle strength is unheard of. Monster. A monster has visited the Sacred Palace. The disciples had a fascinated look on their faces. It was normal as Jian Wushuang had displayed extremely heaven-defying abilities. However, they did not realize the abilities Jian Wushuang showed along Sacred Heaven Road was not even the tip of the iceberg. It was indeed true he was just a high-level Earth ultimate god, but his true battle strength was extremely strong even among high-level heaven ultimate gods. The Sacred Palace disciples would perhaps be frightened to death if he unleashed his full battle strength. Jian Wushuang of course did not quite like to show off and would not have been acting so high profile were it not because he wanted to attract the Sacred Palace keeper's attention. He would have normally used the black stone to conceal his aura to disguise as having a primary level heaven ultimate god's divine power aura so that the public would be more acceptable in the event he displayed powers slightly stronger than his supposed realm's battle strength. Whoosh. Whoosh. 2 figures glided speedily over and landed on the plaza in the blink of an eye before Jian Wushuang. Finally here. Jian Wushuang focused his eyesight and looked over at the blonde middle-aged man between the two. He could sense the pressure brought to him by the blonde middle-aged man, a pressure heaven ultimate god could not possibly bring forth. Only experts at the grand ultimate god level could bring him such heavy pressure. It was clear who he was. Is he the Sacred Palace keeper? Jian Wushuang thought to himself. The blonde man was staring at him too as he looked at him. A powerful soul power shrouded Jian Wushuang's entire body and he naturally also noticed Jian Wushuang's facial disguise. He changed his face. The blonde middle-aged man could see through it all, but he did not show it on his face. Kid, welcome to the Sacred Palace. Sai Zhen, the Sacred Palace Keeper. My pleasure to meet you, Palace Keeper Sai Zhen. Jian Wushuang bowed slightly but did not reveal his name. Follow me. The blonde middle-aged man looked deeply at Jian Wushuang and did not ask any questions in front of the Sacred Palace disciples. He instead brought Jian Wushuang into the grand penthouse. At the top of the penthouse, the blonde middle-aged man sent away the white-robed white-haired man before setting up a restrictive shield around them before he finally asked, Kid, tell me who exactly are you? Chapter 2659, Yin Sua. Jian Wushuang smiled plainly and slowly bowed upon seeing the blonde middle-aged palace keeper Sai Zhen sitting down. Jian Yi. A pleasure to meet you, Palace Keeper Sai Zhen. Palace Keeper Sai Zhen suddenly stood up in surprise. Jian Yi. You're the Northern Darkstar Territorial Lord? Jian Wushuang did not answer, but his facial muscles began to twitch before reverting to his true form after a short moment. Sai Zhen had seen Jian Wushuang's portrait before as one of Crimson Stone Fort's highest authorities and naturally recognized his face right away. It's really you? Palace Keeper Sai Zhen was rather shocked but soon shook his head. It can't be. The Northern Darkstar Territorial Lord should be a peak Earth ultimate god according to our intelligence, but your cultivation level. The cultivation level those people previously sensed was due to my divine power aura being masked with a special method. My true level is only at the high-level Earth ultimate god. Jian Wushuang smiled. However, I've heard you concurrently withstood 3 heaven ultimate gods by yourself and wasn't even at a disadvantage. In other words, you already have the battle strength no less than that of a heaven ultimate god as a high-level Earth ultimate god. Sai Zhen slightly squinted. That's indeed true, admitted Jian Wushuang directly. However, The fact remains that he was merely a primary-level Earth Ultimate God when he withstood 3 primary-level Heaven Ultimate Gods by himself and had only made a breakthrough to high-level Earth Ultimate God after obtaining some divine elixir pills later, which was what Palace Keeper Sai Zhen was witnessing. Jian Wushuang would not take initiative to mention that, of course. No wonder you have only spent less than an hour in the Sacred Heaven Road to reach the summit. The Sacred Heaven Road challenges are set in accordance with one's cultivation level. The challenges you experienced should be set at that level as well, since you're only a high-level Earth Ultimate God. Your opponents in the 1000th-step consciousness space were only peak Earth Ultimate Gods with stronger abilities, so there's no way they could compete against you. Sai Zhen gazed solemnly at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang smiled plainly. Palace Keeper Sai Zhen, you overly flattered me. You know my current situation well, with both the Life and Death Tower, Divine Demon Sect, and many others enthusiastically looking for me to obtain the interspatial ring on me. I've been concealing my true identity all these years while traveling to Danyang continent from northern Darkstar territory just because I want to pass the interspatial ring to the Crimson Stone Fort Master. However, perhaps it's not so easy for someone of my status to meet the Fort Master, hence I can only come to Sacred Palace and make a fuss to lure you into personally meeting me. I can understand your intentions and shall transmit a message to the Fort Master. Palace Keeper Sai Zhen nodded slightly and immediately took out a message token. An answer was received about a minute later. The Fort Master is currently discussing something with Grand Elder Yun Shan and said shall come to meet you immediately right after the discussion, said Palace Keeper Sai Zhen. I shall wait here for a little while in that case. Jian Wushuang smiled patiently. The wait took almost half a day and finally, ring. A figure slowly appeared before Jian Wushuang after a light beam flashed. It was an extremely beautiful, slender and tall woman with a rosy cheek clad in an ice blue long dress. She even possessed a majestic air, perhaps due to her high status. Although she did not purposely let out a strong divine power aura, one would not dare think of committing any blasphemy acts toward her as she stood there. Is she Crimson Stone Saint's daughter, Yin Sua? Jian Wushuang calmly looked at the beautiful lady. You are Jian Yi. Yin Sua also looked toward Jian Wushuang. A pleasure to meet you. Jian Wushuang modestly bowed as a sense of respect toward an expert. Is the interspatial ring still with you right now? Yin Sua's voice was incredibly cold. Jian Wushuang turned his hand to show the interspatial ring that Scorpion King had tossed at him before dying. There was not even a missing blood gems, as he had never touched it at all ever since he carefully guarded the interspatial ring. He simply passed the interspatial ring into Yin Sua's hand in its complete and original form. Yin Sua quickly scanned through the interspatial ring when she took it and nodded. 3,700 million pounds of blood gems is truly a great wealth. It's unfortunately I've lost one of my right-hand men, Scorpion King, due to these blood gems. It's only a matter of time before I find Life and Death Tower and Divine Demon Sect to seek vengeance after cleaning up those factions in the Crimson Stone Fort. Jian Wushuang's expression remained the same upon hearing that, despite agreeing with her in his mind. Life and Death Tower and Divine Demon Sect had the guts to make their move on Scorpion King under so many people's watchful eyes because they were not afraid of Yin Sua seeking revenge. Yin Sua indeed currently did not possess the capabilities to get back at them by merely relying on the powers she could maneuver, which was not comparable with either Divine Demon Sect or Life and Death Tower at that point. However, it was not something that could be easily achieved unless she could unite all the power within Crimson Stone Fort. Yin Sua gazed at Jian Wushuang again. Scorpion King communicated with me earlier and mentioned you before. He said you possess a token from my father. Indeed. Jian Wushuang took out the token that Crimson Stone Saint gave him. Yin Sua, who was extremely familiar with Crimson Stone Saint and Palace Keeper Sai Zhen, immediately recognized it as soon as the token was shown. It's real. Yin Sua and Sai Zhen looked at each other with a strange light shining in their eyes. Yin Sua continued, Scorpion King told me before that you aren't a personal disciple of my father, so this token, the token is indeed given to me by Crimson Stone Saint. You can personally go to Saint's tomb and ask, as it's because of a deal I made with him, said Jian Wushuang. What kind of a deal? Yin Sua asked. It's a very simple deal. I promise him to help you resolve your current crisis once I possess sufficient abilities before helping you to make a breakthrough into the Undying Saint realm if possible in return for the Fengtian scroll, said Jian Wushuang. Fengtian scroll? My father had given his Fengtian scroll to you? Yin Suo was shocked. She knew the Fengtian scroll's origin. It was an extremely rare treasure. After Crimson Stone Saint died, many experts knew that he had left behind a residential tomb with the Fengtian scroll located there. Therefore, those experts were attracted by it and wanted to enter his tomb and explore. Unfortunately, Crimson Stone Saint had set up multiple layers of restrictive shields to the extent that one would not be able to enter by force unless they had the capabilities of an Undying Saint. Fengtian scroll had thus been left inside his tomb. Chapter 2660. Sacred Palace Disciple. Her father gave such a precious treasure to Jian Yi who was standing before her. Moreover, Jian Yi was not his personal disciple and they merely made a deal. Is father so trusting towards him and thinking he can really help me? Yin Suo thought to herself before saying, father must have his reasons for willing making a deal with you using the Fengtian scroll and have you help me, but your current abilities are still rather weak. Jian Wushuang was at a loss for words. It was undeniable that his current abilities would not be looked upon highly by Yin Suo or any grand ultimate gods. How about this? Why don't you stay here in the Sacred Palace since you've taken the Sacred Heaven Road and reached the summit? There are a lot of cultivation resources here for you to increase your abilities. I'll ask Palace Keeper Sai Zhen to grant you the convenience of obtaining whatever you need and ask for, said Yin Suo. There actually are items that I need, said Jian Wushuang. Tell me. Yin Suo was rather calm. I need divine elixir pills, said Jian Wushuang directly. How many? Yin Suo asked. As many as possible. A few thousand would be best, said Jian Wushuang. A few thousand? Yin Suo was shocked. Jian Yi, a few thousand divine elixir pills? You really have quite an appetite. Palace Keeper Sai Zhen also opened his eyes widely and stared at Jian Wushuang. Oh, is it difficult? Jian Wushuang asked. Not that it's difficult but simply impossible, said Sai Zhen. It's indeed impossible. Yin Suo nodded as well. Divine elixir pills aren't as common as primordial stones. Although Crimson Stone Fort is quite wealthy and that we do keep quite a bit of divine elixir pills, most of them have their specific function with not many that we can actually use. Furthermore, the most important point was that Yun Shan guarded most of those pills which could be used. Do you know him? Yes. The leader of another faction in Crimson Stone Fort, the Grand Elder of Crimson Stone Fort, said Jian Wushuang. Exactly. Even though I'm the Crimson Stone Fort Master, there are quite many resources that I need to go through him if I want to take them. The divine elixir pills are an example. I might not be able to ask for too many even if I personally requested the pills. I can't guarantee how many I can obtain but I'll do my best to request for you, said Yin Suo. I shall thank you in advance, said Jian Wushuang gratefully. He knew it would be difficult for Yin Suo's, but it was already very kind of her to agree with helping him as much as she could. It was also because Crimson Stone Saint had personally sent him. Otherwise, he would never receive such special treatment from Yin Suo. Was it someone else? Jian Yi, this is your Sacred Palace Disciple's token. Please stay in the Sacred Palace for the coming days. I shall inform everyone that all the resources in Sacred Palace are unconditionally open for your use. Palace Keeper Sai Zhen passed Jian Wushuang a token. Jian Wushuang accepted it and nodded slightly before leaving. Yin Suo and Palace Keeper Sai Zhen remained in the penthouse. Fort Master, do you really think Jian Yi can help you change our current situation? Sai Zhen inquired. I don't know. Yin Suo shook her head. But my father always had a way to spot the right people. He must have seen immense possibilities in Jian Yi since he recognized that Jian Yi would be of great help for me and even made a deal with him using the Fengtian scroll. I'll naturally do my very best to help him grow since father firmly believes in him offering me great help. Palace Keep Sai Zhen solemnly said, that's indeed quite true. The old master was an undying saint and had seen things that our kind won't possibly believe after all. Besides, Jian Yi is indeed extraordinary from the abilities he displayed. Jian Yi relied on his own strength to fight against 3 heaven ultimate gods a few decades ago when Scorpion King had fallen. However, his cultivation level was only at high-level Earth ultimate god, yet could easily pass through the sacred heaven road to reach the summit within an hour. These 2 instances are amazing enough. I have seen many geniuses as the sacred palace keeper, such as some of the demons in Dragon Phoenix Pavilion. However, I'm afraid they wouldn't be able to present a genius who is comparable to him even for Dragon Phoenix Pavilion, who boast of accepting only the best. No. Yin Sua shook her head. Dragon Phoenix Pavilion is full of geniuses, and those you normally see aren't necessarily their best. I've at least heard of one person who's regarded as the most extraordinary genius in Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's history, with talents that exceed our imagination. That person's talent is probably even higher than Jian Yi. Dragon Phoenix Pavilion has such genius. Palace Keeper Sai Jun was shocked. I've only heard of this person but never the pleasure to meet her. She's a woman who's quite young, said Yin Sua before diverted back to their topic. Anyways, this Jian Yi is worth our complete efforts to nurture. He can at least become of great help if he could grow stronger, even if he can't become someone who can single-handedly change our situation in Crimson Stonefort as my father expected. As long as he becomes a grand ultimate god in the future, the help he can provide will be even greater than Scorpion King's. Scorpion King, as Palace Keeper Sai Jun fell silent as Scorpion King's name was mentioned. Scorpion King was absolutely loyal to Crimson Stone Saint just like him and gave his all to assist Yin Sua. The 2 of them might as well be considered Yin Sua's left and right hands. Scorpion King and he were like brothers who had been through so much. However, the Scorpion King fell. Most importantly, they knew how he fell and who had killed him, but had no ability to avenge him at that moment. It was truly their biggest regret. It's only a matter of time before we avenge the Scorpion King, but our current urgency is to straighten out Yun Shan and the Blood Thunder King. Our resources were tight before, but having this batch of blood gems has bought us some time and slightly reduced the pressures I've been facing. Yin Sua's expression was cold, but her eyes were shining with a strange light of hope. As for the divine elixir pills that Jian Yi needs, he probably uses them to increase his cultivation level. I'll do my very best to help him get them while I'll let you take care of the other matters. Try to provide as much as you can if he has other needs and report to me any time if there are any movements or increases in his abilities, reminded Yin Sua. Aye. Sai Jun nodded respectfully. Yin Sua did not stay any longer and left after giving a few more instructions. Chapter 2661, Spacetime Beast. The Sacred Palace was a place where Crimson Stone Fort nurtured geniuses, and it was where geniuses were plenty. After becoming one of the many disciples there, Jian Wushuang took a stroll in the vicinity. The Sacred Palace was very large and contained quite a lot of specific places for cultivation. Jian Wushuang was checking out the cultivation spaces that were more or less helpful to cultivate the understanding of certain laws or principles one by one. Even though the cultivation spaces were really quite helpful to regular genius disciples at Earth Ultimate God level, they were of little use for Jian Wushuang, whose battle strength was sufficient to withstand high-level Heaven Ultimate Gods. He passed by many cultivation spaces along the way, but nothing seemed satisfactory enough for him to join and study. Especially the Sword Principal Palace that he just walked by. Although the Sword Principal Palace claimed to be one that specialized in sword principles with various kinds of sword techniques to be studied inside, there isn't much to study with my current achievement. I could perhaps study those sword skills before my sword principle reaches the sword world's profound achievement, but now, I can see through their fundamentals. Jian Wushuang sighed secretly. There were various cultivation spaces along the way, with only a handful being of little help to him. He arrived at a huge green palace at that moment. The incredibly wide green palace with a special spacetime energy surrounding it had caught Jian Wushuang's attention. At the palace door, a purple-clad old man stood there like an old Zen monk with his eyes closed as someone walked out of the palace right at that moment. Senior brother. Jian Wushuang went up to him. A down-to-earth-looking big man raised his head and asked, "Yes? Can I help you?" "Well, I'm unfamiliar with a lot of matters here as I've just arrived at the Sacred Palace." I would like to ask Senior Brother, what is inside this palace? Jian Wushuang asked. The down-to-earth man answered, this palace is the Space-Time Palace. It's a place disciples use to study space-time law with quite an amazing space-time beast in the palace. You're welcome to go in and try if you're studying space-time law, but you'll need to have enough sacred points. Is that so? Jian Wushuang was slightly moved. Space-Time Palace was used for studying space-time law, and it just so happened that it was what he studied. Thank you, Senior Brother. Jian Wushuang thanked him and immediately walked towards the Space-Time Palace's entrance. Once he arrived at the door, the meditating monk-like old man in purple clothes opened his eyes and gazed at him. Spending a month in the Space-Time Palace requires 10 sacred points. Sacred points? Jian Wushuang was weirded out. He knew that sacred points were widely circulated contribution credits among the Sacred Palace disciples gained through carrying out missions, exchanging treasures, or even through battle gambles with fellow disciples. I just arrived at Sacred Palace and have no sacred points, but Palace Keeper Sai Zhan had instructed that any resources in the Sacred Palace are unconditionally opened for me to use. Entering the Space-Time Palace should be within my rights, said Jian Wushuang. All resources are opened unconditionally for you. His Excellency the Palace Keeper said that to you personally. The purple-clad old man looked at him in surprise. Indeed, you can always check in with Palace Keeper Sai Zhan if you don't believe me. Jian Wushuang smiled. The old man did not completely believe him and thereafter inquired through his message token before very soon received a reply. His Excellency really gave such an order. The old man looked in disbelief before taking a good look at Jian Wushuang. He then said, please enter. Thank you very much, said Jian Wushuang, who went straight into the Space-Time Palace. The down-to-earth man that Jian Wushuang just talked to went up after he entered. Elder Purple, what's going on? How come you let that man just now in without giving you any sacred points? He asked in surprise. Normally, the Sacred Palace disciples had to pay sacred points before they could enter into the Space-Time Palace. Well, the old man mumbled for a short while before he summarized Palace Sai Zhan's instructions. Goodness, who is he to have all the resources in the Sacred Palace opened to him? How come he gets such special treatments? The down-to-earth man felt more envious than stunned. There was a gigantic plaza inside the Space-Time Palace with a dozen Sacred Palace disciples scattered around and sitting in lotus posture. In the foremost part of the plaza was a huge black statue. That's big. Jian Wushuang raised his head to stare at the black statue. The incredibly big black statue was 3,000 meters tall. The noseless black beast had a triangular head, huge eyes, and a tiny mouth. It had 2 horns on its forehead and looked incredibly fierce. Its body was covered in cold black scales. Every one of those black scales was the size of an adult human, which spread across every corner of the figure like black fire. It looked very vivid, as though it was alive. Jian Wushuang felt uncontrollably moved upon his very first glance at the black beast, as he could sense strong space-time energy from the beast. The space-time energy was covering the entire beast's body and even on each scale. Jian Wushuang even felt that every scale on the black beast's body contained space-time law. His soul power did a thorough search and discovered there were exactly 1,000 scale pieces on the beast. Space-time beast. Is this what the senior brother just now referred to as the space-time beast? Jian Wushuang mumbled. He immediately sat down in a lotus style on the plaza and closed his eyes before beginning his studies. It took a short moment before Jian Wushuang sensed something. Every scale on the black beast represented a piece of space-time law. 1,000 scale pieces mean 1,000 pieces of space-time law. The space-time law's first stage could form 1,000 apparitions. Jian Wushuang mumbled to himself quietly and soon got his answer. Every space-time law on the 1,000 scales indeed represents 1,000 apparitions. Once I've understood the space-time law on all of the scales, I can conjure 1,000 apparitions. It then means I've completed the first stage of space-time laws, which is also the limit. The space-time law has to evolve once again after that towards the second stage. Chapter 2662, Second Stage, Space-Time Strangulation. Jian Wushuang had fully immersed himself in understanding the space-time beast. Forming apparitions was merely the first stage and step of space-time law. There was the second stage, third stage, and so on after that. Jian Wushuang had been using Fengtian's scroll to increase his understanding of laws within the 40 years' journey from northern Darkstar territory to Danyang continent. His understanding of space-time law and transmigration law had tremendously increased at that point. He could concurrently already form 1,000 apparitions when it came to space-time law. In other words, he had achieved the limit of space-time law's first stage. However, he had not taken his step into the second stage. Jian Wushuang had found a trace of opportunity from the space-time beast to cross into the second stage at that moment. Those scales, Jian Wushuang's soul power energy was scrutinized on every single scale. Those scales had become one entity within his senses. There were 1,000 scales, yet it felt like there was only one scale. Those scales which had the first stage of space-time law were evolving to its extreme. However, the space-time law within the scales continued to evolve and gradually evolved into a gigantic space-time black hole following Jian Wushuang's continued studies. In Jian Wushuang's eyes, the huge space-time beast in front of him had vanished and only to be replaced with a terrifying space-time black hole. Infinite strangulation energy swept into all directions within the space-time black hole. Strangulation, space-time strangulation. Jian Wushuang was shaken in the heart. Space-time law's first stage was the formation of apparition, while its second stage was space-time strangulation. One had to learn to control the power of space-time strangulation at that stage. Jian Wushuang had been exploring all those years but had not been able to find anything. However, he could see the complete evolution form of the space-time law through the space-time beast. Is that so? That is how space-time law's first stage evolves to the second stage? The space-time law that Jian Wushuang had control began to evolve according to the evolution process on the space-time beast. Time passed day after day and very soon Jian Wushuang had stayed in the space-time palace for a good half-month. He finally opened his eyes and smiled joyfully while still sitting in lotus style at the plaza. Second stage, successful. He felt very happy inside. Previously, he did not look forward much to the cultivation resources the sacred palace had to offer. Those resources were not of much use to cultivators at the heaven ultimate god realm and above. However, who would have thought he was lucky enough to find a space-time beast statue there? The space-time beast contained the space-time law's evolution and it just so happened to be very helpful for him. After carefully studying it had immensely helped his understanding of space-time law. Every breakthrough to a new stage in space-time law is a huge leap forward which causes fundamental changes in the control of space-time law. There are too many people here, so let me go find a quiet place to try it out. Jian Wushuang stood up right away and exited the space-time palace. The purple-clad old man still had his eyes closed and was standing like a meditating old monk outside the space-time palace. His eyelids twitched as he realized Jian Wushuang had just walked out and gave him a glance without speaking. Jian Wushuang arrived on an empty field. Let's try. Jian Wushuang's body suddenly moved with a sense of longing in his eyes. Space-time law energy burst out in an instant as his figure suddenly glided out. There were no apparitions as Jian Wushuang moved to the end of the field in a flash and was back to where he was in another. From beginning to end, his figure did not leave a trace, at least to bare eyes in the void, such that even the ordinary heaven ultimate gods would not be able to see his figure. Fast, too fast. Although there were no apparitions, it's 10 times faster than when forming apparitions. This speed is a whole other concept altogether. Jian Wushuang exclaimed. Speed had always been his forte. The speed that he previously had could be considered extremely fast among heaven ultimate gods. However, it was not comparable to his newly possessed speed. Jian Wushuang believed that even ordinary primary-level heaven ultimate gods would not have time to react if he were to perform attacks with such terrifying speeds. Even if high-level heaven ultimate god could respond, their defense would still seem very embarrassing under his high-speed attacks. Law understanding would become harder and harder from then on. In the first stage of spacetime law, one's understanding would increase following the increase of apparitions alongside one's speed increment. However, Ordinary primary-level heaven ultimate gods who studied spacetime law could only form 300 to 400 apparitions at most. One had to be a high-level heaven ultimate god to be able to form 600 or 700 apparitions. Forming 1,000 apparitions was the first stage's limit. Many top high-level heaven ultimate gods or even ordinary peak heaven ultimate gods could reach that level. Jian Wushuang was also once at that level. However, there were not many who could reach the second stage of spacetime law even among peak heaven ultimate gods, but Jian Wushuang did. In other words, his existing understanding of spacetime law was extremely strong even amongst peak heaven ultimate gods, and so was his speed. Many peak heaven ultimate gods would not be able to catch up to his speed. Furthermore, his spacetime energy control had increased a great deal after arriving at that level, which did not only show in his speed. There were many more. Spacetime, strangulation. Jian Wushuang's body shook as huge strangulation energy burst out and covered the entire field within it. The strangulation energy was extremely overpowering and cutting everything in a frenzy. He was certain that cultivators below heaven ultimate gods would have turned into tiny bits in the blink of an eye were they to be in the field. Even the ordinary primary level heaven ultimate gods would find it difficult to fend off the strangulation energy. Most importantly, one could not hide at all under that strangulation energy like many spacetime tactics like the spacetime apparition, and would be crushed in a split second. At that moment, Jian Wushuang gradually raised his palms as the huge strangulation energy around him gathered in his hands. In the blink of an eye, a half-meter-length small shapeless wind blade appeared in Jian Wushuang's hand. Although the wind blade was not big, its power and strangulation energy contained therein was terrifyingly strong. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.